Hello and welcome back to This is Ibrox. Today we're going to run a special feature for you guys. It's a new series we're going to be running on the channel called Rangers Ranks. Now what we're going to be doing essentially, we're going to look through Rangers history and look at different categories, and we're going to rate the subjects in those categories between 1 and 5. Top tier being the best tier, bottom tier being the lowest. Quite self-explanatory. What we're going to look at today in episode 1 is going to be Rangers captains. So we're going to be looking at all the captains throughout our history to an extent, granted that we've not seen quite a lot of them. But what we're going to be doing is rating them for grades 1 to 5. So who's in your top tier captains? Who's bottom tier captains that you'd maybe rather forget? So join me today, Scott Patterson and Dylan Forsyth. How are we, guys?
Hello, buddy. How are you? You all right, Reiss?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
Yes, very well, thank you.
What about yourself, Dylan?
I'm all good, mate. Quite excited to start a new series. So, yeah, let's get into it.
Yeah, good. So, for those listening at home rather than watching, I don't know if you're familiar with tier lists, but what we're going to be doing is essentially going through, I think we've got 16 or so club captains for Rangers history. And what we're going to be doing is putting them into tiers. So, we've got top tier of club legend. Below that, we've got icon. The middle tier will be fans' favourite. Fourth tier, done a job. So ones that were maybe all right, but no quite great.
Served their purpose.
Aye, done a job. There wasn't a lot of other candidates, put it that way. And then at the bottom tier, we've got sackable offence. To be quite honest, it's reserved for a certain someone, but we'll see how we go on there. Now, throughout this series, we're obviously starting with captains to make it quite a straightforward one to begin with. But going forward, we could look at Rangers managers, we could look at Old Firm wins, we could look at transfer windows, January signings, anything. So anything that you would quite like us to see rank for grades 1 to 5 in terms of what we think was the best one, worst, and so on, is to have a Rangers legend, for talking's sake. Just to get a bit of debate going there. That you would like to see us debate and rank, put it in the comments below, leave a review, whatever. So just let us know how it's getting on.
Good.
So without further ado, I think it's probably best that we give a mention to the likes of Tom Valance, Jock Shaw, and who was the other guy you had said as well, Scott?
We mentioned John McClelland from the very early 80s, but they certainly deserve honourable mentions. There's no two ways about
that. Aye. Now it's safe to say I never seen any of them. Scott, I'm pretty sure you would be pushed yourself to see some of them.
I was pushed. I remember John McClelland very, very briefly, but the two guys before were way before my time, honest.
Aye. So we thought it might be a bit unfair to try and rank them in comparison to players we've seen. So what we're going to do is we're going to work our way from about John Gregg's era, because as an honorary legend of the club, we thought it's best to include them.
Yeah.
So, as I say, we're going from club legend to a sackable offence of Rangers captains. So, viewers watching at home will see in front of me, we have got pictures of the captains down below. So, what we're going to do is go through them one by one, and yourself and Dylan, Scott, can discuss where you would put them.
Yep.
Should we come to a slight disagreement, just as host, I'll give the casting vote. But feel free to let us know in the comments anything you disagree with, you agree with, or where you would have put them.
Yeah, good.
So starting off with, in chronological order, John Gregg, guys. Where would you put him?
An absolute legend, no two ways about it. The fact that he's still in and around the club now, at the age he is, shows how highly he's regarded and respected, quite rightfully. Won the trophy that really is the greatest night in the club's history in Barcelona in 1972. I defy anyone to say he's not a legend.
What about yourself, Dylan? What you think?
Yeah, I agree with Scott. I think he's Mr. Rangers. I think he's really done it all at the club. I think when you look at the list of all-time greatest Rangers, I think he's always certainly in the top 2, in my opinion. he's been a very fortunate captain as well. To captain us to a European victory for the Governors' Cup. So for this alone, he'd be club legend. But of course, he's a fantastic ambassador for the club, fantastic role model. So yeah, club legend for me, any day of the week.
Yep, right. So we're starting there with a tap in. Nice and easy. John Gregg, top tier club legend. There we go, straight to the top. So second chronological order, we're going to go Derrick Johnson. This was, I believe, late 70s, early 80s. Derrick Johnson was captain of Rangers. Anybody get any shouts for him straight away?
So listen, I'll take Derrick Johnson. I think Derrick Johnson is. See, this is hard. This is difficult. I would say Derrick Johnson's an icon.
He is on that Icons of Ibrox poster outside Ibrox.
Just by chance, I'm saying icon, honest. No, I think Derrick Johnson, he'll obviously remembered for the header that he scored against Celtic in I think it was the early 70s. I'm not entirely sure. I think it was early 70s, might even have been late 60s. I know he was 16, young guy, made his way to Glasgow from Dundee and had a wonderful career at the football club, you have to say. Played centre half and of course a striker. He's an icon for me. He's not quite on the same level as John Gregg. I think a lot of that comes down to the fact that John Gregg was the captain that won that big trophy for us, to be perfectly honest with you. For me, Derrick Johnson would certainly be an icon. Again, someone who you see around about the stadium on match day. He's in and out of Ibrox at all. He's in and out of Ibrox a lot. And someone who's clearly connected with the fabric of the club. So he's certainly an icon for me.
I don't know if it's just kind of my perspective and my generation, but I'm all know Derrick Johnson for being on Clyde One. So I mean, I'm all know been on the radio.
And Sky Sports News as well, occasionally.
Absolutely.
Sometimes he covers the European fixtures. That's kind of just about all I remember him for. But it's worth noting with a bit of research, he was captain for 5 years. And what possibly puts a wee bit of a dent in it for me, having not been there, he was named captain after requesting a transfer. I don't know if that maybe shades it. He was named captain by John Gregg after Gregg became manager and Derrick Johnson requested a transfer.
Did they know that? Did not know that.
I don't know if that maybe puts a wee dent in it.
I mean, perhaps. I still think he done goal scorer. Do you know what I mean? Scored important goals. Was a Scotland internationalist when he was at the club as well. As I say, he's certainly someone I would definitely put him in tier 2 icon.
There's a bit of prehistoric Mbappe there, I reckon. Try to get a bit more power the same as leaving. So would you reckon, Dylan, where are we putting Derrick Johnson?
Yeah, I'll probably just have to trust Scott's judgment in this one. Obviously, growing up, Rangers books, you always see his name pop up. And again, he is a bricks at the club. So I think icon seems like the best level for him personally.
All right, yeah. Right. Derrick Johnson slotted into icon. It's worth bearing in mind as well for viewers and listeners, we're going to limit it to maybe a max of 4 in each tier because it'd be quite easy to go through this list and put 9 or 10 of them in club legend. But in order to make the panelists make a bit more of a choice and a decision and potentially cause a bit more controversy, we're going to limit how many people we can put in each tier. So if you want to put somebody in the same tier as somebody else, it's maybe not possible and you need to make that choice.
Okay.
So quite safe to put them on the one tier, but unfortunately not. So next up, we've got Craig Patterson. So again, well before my time. I think he captained Rangers for 2 years between 82 and 84.
Yeah.
Led to believe. So to be totally honest with you, until I was researching the captains, it wasn't somebody I'd even heard of.
So listen, so Craig Patterson would have been well ahead of your time, Reiss, and your time, Dylan. I really wish he wasn't my time, but I can tell you a wee bit about him. You're absolutely right. Sort of centre half, early 80s, around about the same time as John McClelland was at the club, indeed. and probably at a time when Rangers were not recognisable as what you guys would understand them to be now, even before sort of 2012 and all the stuff that went down back then. Sort of Rangers were really not recognisable back in those early 80s. Craig Patterson, for me, probably goes into the done a job category. I wouldn't say he's necessarily a fan's favourite, nor an icon, nor a club legend, but I think at the time, for those 2 seasons, he ticked that box of being ready and unavailable back then.
Mm-hmm. Right, we'll slot him right in. He'd done a job there. I think that's a fair shout, considering he's not done anything bad, but the guy's just not really a standout name at the minute.
As an aside, in the wee picture of Craig Patterson, who spells his surname correctly, by the way, I have to say, what a kit. Goodness me.
Aye, it's nice.
Oh, man.
Did Hummel no butcher a version of that a few years ago?
Inevitably.
Aye. Well, moving on to more recent ones, we're going to start with Richard Joff. Now, obviously, the 9 in a row winning captain. He joined Rangers quite late on in his career, I believe, signing for Dundee United. Quite an iconic captain, I think. Up to yourselves. Where do we put him, Dylan?
Oh, that's quite a tough one. I think he was basically the poster boy for 9 in a row. At least for me anyway, when you look at all the videos, DVDs, even pictures, you just see him lifting up each one of the 9 big titles. It's quite a hard one, I think. I think it's most Rangers fans' idea of a captain, you know. I think he was like a barreling centre back, brilliant defender. I'd be tempted to put him in club legend, just for the fact that, you know, he was a forward within that period of dominance for Rangers. For me, he would be club legend, but I don't know if Scott would agree with me or not.
Yep, 100%. For those of us who were around watching us breeze through 9 in a row, he was a guy that was at the forefront of much of it. Of course, the night that we won 9 in a row, he was the captain. It was Alan McLaren who was captain that night, because Goff was either injured or suspended. I can't honestly remember. But Alan McLaren, I'm sure, captained us that night. And obviously at the end, it was Goffey's last game, so it was a really emotional night for him to get his hands on that trophy up at Tannadice. So yeah, I think at that sort of 9-year time, I think Dylan's absolutely right. He kind of epitomised what that run was about for all the players involved. Richard Goff is 100% a club legend.
I think there's a fair bit of narrative with that Goff return to Tannadice, lifting the 9 in a row.
Yeah.
There's a wee bit of nostalgia in that. You always see that photo of him in the suit lifting the trophy.
Yeah.
Which evidently reminds me that he wasn't a captain that night. Evidently didn't play. So I would say club legend's probably a good shout for Richard Goff.
Yeah. So
Actually,
that's got 2 in club legend already, and I'm looking at the other guys that are involved. And okay,
It's going to be real Sophie's choice here, Scott.
Yeah, it would be so easy to put them all kind of top 2 tiers, I reckon. But this is where it's going to get difficult. Worth noting as well, Richard Goff actually had 2 spells as Rangers captain. After leaving, he then returned in October and was reappointed captain.
Yeah.
So next up, quite a landmark a captaincy for Rangers, I'd say. Following Richard Goff's second spell, we appointed Rangers' first ever publicly Catholic captain, Lorenzo Amoruso.
Yeah.
Amoruso, probably the first Rangers captain I remember, to be totally honest with you. Always, and I'm sure he's all heard this 100 times, my mum fancied him. I think everybody's mum fancied him. I don't think that's much of a shock. But big Amo, I think it's always a mark of a good player when modern players are compared to him. So I remember years ago people singing to William Oshney, "You're just a expletive Amoruso."
Yeah.
So if you remembered that highlight to be compared to him when somebody else comes on the scene, well, usually a good indication.
See, for what it's worth, I'm glad Mosney's not in this, because we would need another couple of tears after Sackable Offence, let me tell you. From my perspective, I liked Amoruso. Amoruso was he was almost very regularly capable of a calamity back and forward. Monaco jumps into my mind immediately. I would say Amoruso is a fan's favourite. I wouldn't class him as an icon, not a club legend, but I would certainly say he's a fan's favourite. I think the fans look back on him very favourably. He enjoyed his time in Glasgow. I think that much is true. But I don't think he ever really done enough to sort of become an icon or a club legend.
What you saying, Dylan? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see where Scott's coming from. I think at the time it seemed a bit of a coup to sign Amoruso, because I think Man United were interested in him as well.
Yeah,
that was back when he was playing Serie A. So at that moment in time, Serie A was the best league in the world. So I think the fact that we managed to sign him was a coup. I think the first season, it would have been Wallace missed last season, so I don't think he played that much. So obviously, like, he's more, prevalent within Big Africats tenure. So yeah, I think I do like him. I do think that he was a good captain for us. He's a maverick. I would say he's kind of like a very cool centre back in a way, but. Yeah, I have to say fans' favourite, even though I think he is fondly remembered by most of the Rangers support, especially within this millennium. I don't think he's done enough to be an icon, let alone a club legend. So I think fans' favourite is a better position for him in this list.
I'd probably agree, to be fair. So our first entrant to the middle tier is Lorenzo Amoruso. And I think, to be quite honest, for the time being that it's just Amoruso in it, we could rename fans' favourite to Mo's favourite. Rangers' mum's favourite.
Or Rangers' fathers. You just never know, Reiss.
Aye, very true. Very true.
Anyone, everyone.
Guys wanted to be him. So next up, we've got, and now honestly, my hero growing up, appointed Rangers captain, aged 22. His first spell as captain lasted 2.5 years before he moved on, would be Barry Ferguson. Barry Ferguson is Rangers captain from 2000, aged 22. Where do we think Barry's going?
Oh, see, this is a difficult. So, Dylan, I'll take this one first, because this is one that I find really hard. I've thought about this a lot today, about where he goes. It's without question one of the top two. The most successful captain in my period supporting the club. And like you, Reiss, I thought the sun shone out his backside. And then he left. And I didn't think like that anywhere, because well, as football fans, we're tribalistic in that sense. You know what I mean? They're great until they disappear. And I was very aware that I felt like that about Ferguson when he came back. However, I was able to ditch the Blackburn top that I'd bought when he disappeared, and I bought a new Rangers one that he brought when he came back up. Yeah, I mean, listen, we've never produced and when I say we, I mean Scottish football never produced a Scottish midfielder like Barry Ferguson. I'm not sure we ever will again, to be perfectly honest with you. There will be candidates, I'm sure, as time passes, but he's certainly the best Scottish midfielder of our generation. And we've seen people sort of try and say that X amount of other players, some currently playing, some just retired earlier on the season, are up to the same standard of him. And they couldn't lace his boots, as far as I'm concerned. That said, I definitely think there's a narrative around Barry Ferguson now that he's no longer playing the game and no longer involved in Rangers in any way, that he doesn't really sort of promote the Rangers narrative, and it may be difficult for him doing that in the media. I don't know. He'd be better placed to answer that than any of us. For that, I don't know if you can justify making him a club legend. Do you know that way? And as I say, I'm a huge fan, but at the moment, I think I would put him on icon just now.
What do you think, Dylan?
Yeah, I think it's very controversial, Barry Ferguson. I think obviously you can admire like the talent, because I don't think, as Scott said, I think he went to Blackburn for like 7 million, something like that.
Yeah.
And you can only imagine what he would go for nowadays if he was playing the current game. I think the first tenure, obviously, a bit before I started going Rangers games, he was unreal. I think in that treble season as well, he was going to be the best player for Rangers.
Yeah.
And obviously he left, but then he came back for road, and he was still quite serviceable, I think. I think most Rangers fans agree that he wasn't the same player as he was before, just because of the injury that he picked up in Blackburn. But I think the thing that really holds him back from being a club legend is, I think, his attitude within the second spell, in particular to the controversy when it was Scotland team, was evidently we've seen him being departed after he kind of go against Waters' instructions. So again, I think that kind of hovers through for me. So he's, in my opinion, he's certainly club icon, but I just think stuff like that where he thought he was bigger than a club just holds him back from club legend, in my opinion. So for me, he's a club icon, without a shadow of a doubt.
Where would you, out of curiosity, Reiss, where would you put him?
I would 100% have him as club legend. If it was up to myself, I don't know if it's because it was the era I grew up in. I remember I had Scotland tops with Ferguson 6 on the back of it. I had Rangers tops Ferguson 6. For me, he's still the player that when you look at a Rangers academy, you go, we want another Barry Ferguson. It's no, we want another, I don't know, we never produced him, but you don't want another whoever, Leigh Mcculloch or whatever. It's always another Barry Ferguson. It's, we need a Barry Ferguson like player in the team whenever something's going wrong at Rangers. You know, I think, to be honest, it's half the hype that when Lewis Ferguson's linked to Rangers, it's simply because he's related.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of truth in that. In his first spell at Ibrox, he dragged us through a lot of games, and you remember the matches that he was going up against Lothar Matthäus, against Bayern Munich, and he was just absolutely he was braining him. Do you know what I mean? He was Matthäus couldn't get in the game, and I remember, I'm sure it was the night, I think it was it Leverkusen, across there, and he done a turn in the middle of the pitch, and it took about 6 of their players, and that first spell he was untouchable, just absolutely untouchable. I genuinely think if you were to ask a huge percent of the Rangers fans now, the very same thing as us, and you were to maybe give him the choice of an icon or a club legend, some may think he's not in any of those two tiers. I think it's worth remembering and pointing out. In my opinion, he's an icon. I certainly wouldn't put him any lower than that. I don't think you can justify doing that, considering how successful he was. He's an icon for me.
I think it's worth noting as well, his second spell came between 2005 and 2009, before he was stripped of captaincy by Walter Smith for that Scotland incident. But see, to be totally honest, it's the kind of things you see players down south absolutely, like, I don't know, it seems to go missing down south now.
Yeah.
Like things they got up to, like you've seen players get done for drink driving and things like that, whereas somebody sticking fingers up to a camera for being a bit rough and sitting on the Scotland bench and what was probably a meaningless friendly. I don't know, I just feel like I can sympathise with him for that totally. And it's worth noting Barry Ferguson won a treble with Rangers in 2003, the year they got to a European final and won nothing. And also captained us in our 2008 run to Manchester.
Yeah.
So, you know, he's got us to a European final, he's won a treble, 50th league title. He's that famous picture that we have down here of him raising the title above his head.
Yeah.
For me, he's a club legend, but do you know what? This is a discussion show and the panel said icon. So anybody willing to dispute the Barry Ferguson one, let us know in the comments. If you think he's club legend, get the guys told. If you think he's fans' favourite, get in there and slate him if you want for his column writing for a newspaper that shall not be named. But now this is where it gets interesting. Now, Barry Ferguson's second spell was interrupted very briefly. Now, for what probably won't surprise most listeners and most viewers, Paul Le Guen, alongside Barry Ferguson, I reckon Paul Le Guen is probably up there with one of the few guys in Rangers history that could start an argument in an empty house. So I think both Barry and Paul Le Guen are probably guilty of that. Now, for whatever reason, Paul Le Guen stripped Barry Ferguson of the captaincy in January 2007. It lasted a total of 12 days. So we have Mr. Gavin Ray, Rangers captain for 12 days in January 2007. What tier are we putting him in, Dylan, and does it even need discussed?
Listen, I think before them in the tier, I'll just say that I've got nothing against Gavin Ray, but it'll be Sackable Offence just because I think it was quite clear to see what Balogun was doing at the time. Clearly wanted out of the club, so he basically tried Gavin Ray into this, which I think is unfortunate for him because I think that sort of tarnished Rangers' image of him, even though it wasn't his own fault. But yeah, Sackable Offence. I mean, even say he'd done a job would just be lying to myself, to be honest. So yeah, Sackable Offence for me.
What are you thinking, Scott?
Listen, it's a difficult one. Gavin Ray was given the captaincy, you know what I mean? Now, if any of us were in the same situation and you got a chap at the door to say, listen, we've bumped Mr. Rangers at that point, you could argue, as Barry Ferguson, our successful captain. We've bumped him. I don't like him. I don't think he likes me. Do you want to be the captain, Reiss? Are you going to say no?
No, 100%. I'm taking it. I'd stick the captain's armband on for 10 minutes if it meant I had to take it off my granny.
Listen, I think the thing about Gavin Ray is that he sort of found himself in that position. It was probably largely untenable, but there was no danger he was going to knock it back. There's no danger he's a Rangers captain by any matter of means. It's almost a shame that there isn't maybe an additional wee tier in there in between done a job and Sackable Offence, because Sackable Offence sounds like he was an absolute donkey. And while I don't think Gavin Ray was one of our better midfielders at that point, I think there's certainly an argument that favours him against being a donkey. However, put him in as a Sackable Offence.
Aye, I'm sorry. Gavin Ray, donkey, Sackable Offence. I think that screams out Paul Le Guen was wanting that compensation payment. He wanted sacked. Gavin Ray given the armband. 12 days. A real Rangers, in my opinion, not to the panel though. A Rangers legend or icon like Barry Ferguson has had nights out longer than Gavin Ray was Rangers captain. Well, moving on from Barry's second spell, what we're going to go to now was Stefan Kloss. Stefan Kloss was the first Rangers goalkeeper to be officially named club captain. Lasted a period of 1 year and 10 days before he was injured long term. So where do we put their goalie?
I was a huge fan of Stefan Kloss. And listen, we speak about goalkeepers. We've probably spoke about them to death this year. On the podcast with McGregor being in and out and whether he's good enough and whether he's not good enough and whether he's retiring or not. I'm a great believer in your captain should be someone who's in the field of play, who's in about the mix, if you like. So I think it's really difficult for your captain to be the goalkeeper. I appreciate he sees the game, but in a Rangers perspective, there's a good chance that Kloss could have spent 90 minutes sitting on his backside doing very little, particularly at that time when we had so much quality in around the team. There were probably games he didn't have a huge amount to do. Maybe different when it got to a European tie and he was captain, where maybe things were maybe more in an opposite direction, where he was getting used a bit more regular. I liked Kloss. I thought he was a really good goalkeeper. I would put him as fans' favourite.
What about yourself, Dylan? Where would you put Stefan Kloss?
This is difficult because this is the captain's tier list. I think straight away, Kloss was a top quality goalkeeper. I mean, many times for us, he was a Champions League winner with Borussia Dortmund. So there's no doubt his quality. I think as captain, but as kind of what Scott said, I think it's quite hard to dictate the game on the pitch and try to get the team to drag over the line. Because I think when I was researching that, I think he was captain for a year, but I think within the first 6 months of his captaincy, he got an injury that ruled him out for the rest of the season, for which I think Fernando Rickson took over for a period of time.
Yeah.
Again, if I'm mistaken, but I don't know. I think it's hard. I think certainly as a player, he would definitely be fans' favourite, but I think as captain, I don't know. I think I may go for done a job personally.
I'm kind of inclined to agree. I would probably go done a job at the minute, just because I think it was a bit short term. Goalkeepers is another category we could come to rank if that's what the viewers are
Which
wanting.
I'm sure we will. I don't think there's any doubt that's going to be coming. Yeah.
But as far as captains go, I would say Stefan Kloss done a job for me at the minute.
He was a quality goalkeeper, but I just think as captain, I think I don't know. I don't think he could have done any more, especially with his injury.
Aye. What do you think, Scott? Are you willing to concede done a job, or do you still think?
I'll concede. I do, because I'm looking at the other guys that are down there, and I'm looking forward to what he's going to say next. So fire him into done a job.
Here we go. We'll go to done a job for Stefan Kloss. So following on for Kloss, we've then got Davey Weir, brought to the club by Walter Smith. He was appointed captain in April 2009. So he was previously vice captain before that. But where would we have Davey Weir? Scott, I'll come to you first. What do you think? Davey Weir, he came to us probably just about verging on getting a pension. So
then stayed for so long. Do you know what I mean? I think people often forget that when Davey Weir came up, yeah, you could argue he was at the tail end of his career. He certainly was, but he was evidently someone who had looked after himself really, really well. David Weir comes from an area not so far from where I stay, and people forget he started his career relatively late in the game. Scholarship across in the States, Falkirk, Hearts, herself. You know what I mean? Everton, he went and played down there as well. And I think he was a cracking role model. You know that? You talk about, we look at Danny Wilson, for example. Danny Wilson looked brilliant when he played for Rangers when he was just breaking into the team, and a huge deal of that was down to the influence that David Weir had on his career. I think Davey Weir will potentially look back on his time at Ibrox and think, oh, goodness me, I wish I went there earlier. I wish I had the opportunity to go there a bit earlier in my career, because I think he would have potentially been a club legend. You know that? I really do. I think if Davey Weir had spent longer at Ibrox and maybe rocked up a wee bit sharper, I think he would have been a club legend. I really do. And I would have no hesitation of firing him in there. Does he strike you as an icon? Perhaps. I don't know. I'm interested to know what Dylan says here. I'm erring towards slap bang in the middle as a fan's favourite. You know that? Because I think when people talk about Davey Weir, they'll always look back on, do you know what I mean? He went above and beyond. He played for years after he came up, when originally only coming up to effectively dig us out. Then the Mark Warburton thing happened. And I think that maybe leaves a bit of a minding in the back of your head as to how that full relationship with the club and Mark Warburton, Frank McParlin ended. And no one really, I think, is understanding of what exactly happened back then. I'm not sure we'll ever find out, frankly. But I'll let Dylan say I think at the moment I'm slap bang in the middle, fans' favourite for me.
What are you thinking, Dylan?
See, it's quite a hard one, because I really, really did like Davey Weir as a player for us. You kind of mentioned how he, like his partnership with Danny Wilson, and how like he basically nurtured him, and how he basically got him and moved over. But I would argue as well that even with Carlos Cuellar and Bocanegra, I think Davey Weir actually made them better players, I would argue. I think it's just no coincidence that Cuellar and Bocanegra had good spells for us, both playing alongside Davey Weir. I think growing up as well, he was like my ideal Rangers captain personally. Again, it's just my generation. I think as again, it's quite hard because obviously you had him as assistant manager with Mark Warburton and how he left the club after that. I think that was a sour day someone smells, but I think for me personally, I would put him up as an icon. I think the fact that he came in, most people think that he'd be like a stopgap, and then he just stayed there, like, up until Al McCoy's first season. I think for me personally, I put him up as icon.
So
You've got the deciding vote, Reiss, again.
One's fans' favourite, one's icon. I'm finding it hard. Just looking at what we've ranked so far, I don't know who I would place Davey Weir closer to in terms of, would I say he's more an Amoruso level or a Barry Ferguson level? He's one of them, you could genuinely stick him right on the line in between.
Yeah.
And I'm halfway, like, honestly, if you're watching now, you'll see me moving between the two of them. But I think for the time being, we'll probably, I would go fans' favourite just because of the short length of time that he spent as captain. I think it was just over 3 years Davey Weir spent as Rangers captain. But no, I've changed my mind. He won a league. He won quite a few titles, and that I would probably go icon. I'm going to go icon.
And I mean, it's easy to forget that. I mean, Davey Weir was captain for that day at Rugby Park, and was it was the glue. Do you know what I mean? It was instrumental for a huge period in our history in recent times, and yeah, I can appreciate why people would maybe see him as an icon. I'm maybe not in that tier yet. I'm aware there's still work to be done yet.
Do you know, I think potentially similar captains will come on to, and dissimilar to ones we've passed, and it's maybe emblematic of the way football's going, like since Davey Weir's era. I think his personality maybe goes against him. A lot of people would see Barry Ferguson or Amoruso as a shouting, in-your-face, emotive, massive character. And I think Davey Weir was always more a lead by example. No timid. He certainly wasn't shy, I'd imagine, when he got the chance, but he was never shouting, coming out in the press and saying stuff like, he was never outlandish. I think that maybe works against him.
One thing I would say, and I don't want it to sound like birthday card pish, Reiss, you understand. However, what I would say is that you used a really crucial word there, and it was lead. And I think what you're looking at a group of guys here that have all had the opportunity to lead the club at one time or another when things have been really good, and we'll come to guys that things maybe weren't so good. David Weir led regardless, I think. And he was a cracking captain for us. He was someone who I think the players and the fans looked up to. I can feel me coming around to an icon, maybe.
Aye. Right. We've got Davey Weir an icon. So just to recap on where we're at so far. So far we've got Gavin Ray, Sackable Offence. Done a job. We've got Craig Patterson and Stefan Kloss. Fans' favourite, or Mo's favourite, we've got Lorenzo Amoruso. Icon, we've currently got Derrick Johnson, Barry Ferguson and Davey Weir. And club legend at present we have Richard Goff and John Gregg. Now, moving on in chronological order again, we then move on to Stephen Davis. Now, he's obviously had a few spells at the club. Of only one of them, he actually reigned as captain. He was only captain for 168 days. He was a stand-in at the start of the 11-12 season, and he became permanent in January the 20th. Where do we put Stephen Davis in terms of it? Because I don't really know whether I've always seen him as a captain or just a leader. I think his presence for Northern Ireland maybe sways it a bit, but it's totally up to yourselves. What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, I think it's very hard one because I think Stephen Davis is one of my favourite Rangers players of all time, especially my generation. And, obviously, with the career he's got, he's captained Northern Ireland to a major international tournament. And he came back up road with us and helped us win title 55 when I thought, he was probably one of the better players that season. But as a captain at that time, I would say just done a job because I think the offence running about that time sort of overshadowed it. Because I think even the squad were starting to get affected by, especially in January time, which was a shame because I think, with the trajectory he was on, he would have been a brilliant captain for us. But I think at the time and in the period that he served as a captain, I would say that he'd done a job because I think he did represent us well. But I think he didn't. I think unfortunately the circumstances at the time prevented him to be more than that.
100%. What about yourself, Scott? What do you think? Do you think he would have lasted longer if the club circumstances were different? How would you rate him as a captain? Do you think his second spell has an influence on maybe where we see Stephen Davis in this tier?
Listen, I think as far as one thing I think we recognise from all of the guys that we've discussed is it takes a special sort of character to lead Rangers. It takes an extra special bit of talent for a player to lead his national side and the club. We know that Stephen Davis over the last couple of years has shattered that record of most international caps, and I think that the period that he's been in and around the club for the last couple of years, I think maybe sways your vote a little bit on this, to be honest with you. I think back then when he was made permanent captain just before everything went belly up, I think that was particularly hard. That was difficult for him. I think he would probably have remained captain, to be honest. But I tend to agree with Dylan. I think at that point, and I'm basing it on that point and not what's happened since, I would put him in done a job, I think.
Done a job. See, we'll stick him in done a job just now. I think Stephen Davis is, again, a bit similar to Weir. He's a very lead by example type of captain. He's not hitting somebody up against the wall kind of captain, because frankly half the dressing room would rip him in half. But at the same time, everybody's got that respect for him. You hear Gerrard and managers coming out and talking about how much a professional he is, how he's lasted so long, his desire and his commitment to his job and coming into training, setting the standards every day and stuff like that. So I think he's definitely a role model, but just for the short spell he had as captain, I'm not so sure that you can stick him in icon or fans' favourite for that matter. Now, the next one, we've got Captain America, Carlos Bocanegra. And it's actually quite hard to believe that he was captain. To be totally honest, I only ever remember him captaining Rangers for that brief period where I think he maybe played one game in the third division. There's that photo of him. I think he walked out at Brecon. We've got the photo of him here in the 2012 kit, which is symbolic that he actually did captain us in that kit, but he then proceeded to go out on loan. We were in the third division. So for me, that skews my view of Boccanegra. I don't know about yourselves.
So I thought Boccanegra was one of the things that Boccanegra had, and I'm not necessarily from a captain's perspective, but from maybe a technical perspective, is that he was a really, really good left-sided centre half. I remember the assist that he had for Jelic at Tynecastle one Sunday afternoon, I'm sure it was, and it was one that he was really technically he was absolutely excellent with the ball at his foot, great bringing the ball out, kind of good ball playing defender, if you like. At that point, he had big Doran Goyan on occasion playing on his right hand side, who probably needed someone with a bit of experience just to maybe manipulate his game a little bit and talk him through important bits of the game. I think Bocanegra could have been probably bigger and better than what he was if he had stuck around longer, to be perfectly honest with you. He's went on to do wonderful things in the game. I'm sure he's a director of football in one of the teams across in the MLS just now. I do think he could have done bigger things at Rangers than what he done. I understand perhaps why he didn't want to travel the length and breadth of the country playing butchers, bakers and candlestick makers, to be perfectly frank. However, I think he's someone that you can look back on with a decent degree of fondness. For me, Bocanegra done a job.
What about yourself, Dylan? We get many memories of Captain America. Just to put a bit of stats on it, he was club captain for 7 games, 33 days to be exact, before moving out on loan. And I think it was he was officially appointed when Davis moved on. Obviously, the summer of 2012, we've seen a massive exit of this first team squad. So I think we went through 3 captains in the one summer. We started with Stephen Davis. He then left. Boccanegra was appointed for 33 days and then moved on. Where do you see him, Darren?
I'm not going to lie, I actually completely forgot that he was club captain for his competition. I was convinced that it was Big Jig all along. But kind of what Scott was saying, he was a good defender for us in the SPL. I really did like him. I thought he was like a solid replacement at the time for Davey Weir. And I saw, at least at the start of the season, him and Doran Goyan did form a good partnership. Obviously, that faded away as soon as circumstances arose. For me, I would be in the category of done a job rather, because again, big respect to him for staying on and at least giving Division 3 a crack, but I think he soon realised the standard that we were up against, especially in the first game when he came out pre-Ken. He did seem like the massive hedge. So I think for me, done a job. And, you know, I'm quite gutted because I think he was gutted as well to leave the club. Because I think he was pretty much settled here. He loved Glasgow, but for me, done a job. But again, he could have been one of those what-if players if it was for circumstances.
Aye, I think Bocanegra falls into that category of players that you maybe think, if only he came to Rangers sooner in his career, it wasn't at the tail end. I think he was a great player. He's maybe one of these players who was a bit, I don't think it's unfair to say naive as to how big the club is. A bit like the likes of Clint Hill and maybe guys even like Davey Weir, who spent most of his career down south, who until you're at Rangers, you don't realise the size of the club. And then when you're there, you wish you'd been there for a lot longer than what you're going to be there for. I think Bocanegra done a job. For me, he can't go above Stephen Davis if he was captain for 33 days. Even though he had that nickname, Captain America, which for me, gives him a decent rating straight away. But I believe Bocanegra's now the technical director at Atlanta United in America. It's a shame they don't play in blue, but other than that, I can fully back him.
I'm pretty good work his magic.
I've not really got a dog in that race, so Atlanta United, I'll be with you for that, as long as it's no Ronnie Dyler's team. So moving on into the third division, after Boccanegra seen Brechin and done the boost, I think it's fair to say one of the more significant recent appointments in our club's captaincy, Leigh Mcculloch. Now, he's quite emblematic of our lower league times. For some fans, he probably brings back the wrong memories. Now, seeing him in that kind of Puma kit and that we've got there, it does take me back and reminds me of some dark times with Rangers, playing part-timers in League 2, League 1, Petrofac Cup, Ramsden's Cup. He was probably there for most of it. What do we think about Leigh Mcculloch, Dylan?
I mean, I think it's quite hard with him because obviously, fans do associate him with the darker times in our history. But for me, I'll always have a special place in my heart for McCulloch, as well as Wallace and Alexander, because at the time when everybody was leaving the club, he could have very easily, I think, signed for another SPL club or maybe signed for someone in like the lower half of the championship at that point in his career. But I think the fact that he stayed provide that sense of continuality with us, where we're still like this big club that we're still got like, you know, players a decent pedigree. I think as well during that time, I think when people sort of associate him with darker times, I don't think he was by far and away like the worst performer. So I don't think it's fair to rank him alongside the likes of Ian Black and Mosney in that regard.
For me, it would be unfair to tarnish him with the same brush, I think.
Exactly. So for me personally, I don't know about Scott, but I would put him as fans' favourite just because I think at that time we really needed someone like him to be captain. And again, he does a good service. I think it's just a shame that it didn't end so well because I think he left after the first championship season. So again, that's what tainted his reputation a bit. But for me, fans' favourite because I think I can always appreciate what he's done for the club at that time.
What do you think, Scott? Leigh Mcculloch, I reckon he would have cut the grass at Ibrox if we asked him at the time. He played just about everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I remember going to an awards dinner, and McCulloch was at it, and he was still playing at the time, and he spoke with real passion about how proud he was to be involved at the club. Do you know what I mean? It was something that meant a huge deal to him. You can only imagine how it felt being awarded the captain's armband, regardless of who you're playing. He was still going to have the opportunity to wander out and lead sort of his teammates out into 50,000 people at Ibrox against teams like Brecon and all these part teams that we speak about, part-time teams. I loved Leigh Mcculloch, I have to say. I was a huge fan of his. And when you look at the other guys on the board just now, do you know what I mean? Left back, centre halves, strikers, midfielders, a goalie. Leigh Mcculloch played in three of the hardest positions there is to play: centre half, centre midfield, and up front. And I think you could argue he was reasonably successful for a period of time in each of these roles. As I say, I was a huge fan, so I'm maybe a wee bit biased as far as McCulloch's concerned. I don't think he comes into the same sort of category as DJ or Ferguson or Davey Weir. He certainly doesn't get close to Richard Goff or John Gregg. For me, I think you could put him in alongside Amoruso as a fan's favourite.
What about you, Dylan? Where's your judgment line with Leigh Mcculloch at the minute?
Yeah, certainly fans' favourite. I think he was a better captain than Steve Davies and Boccanegra and Kloss.
Yeah.
But I think, obviously, in that period of Rangers history, I don't think you can, it's fair to rank him alongside the icons. So for me, fans' favourite. But again, I think he'll always have a special place in every single Rangers fan's hearts.
Aye, I think he's definitely, not to add any more tiers to this list, but he's definitely upper level fans' favourite for me. Yeah. I rate him higher than I would Amoruso. I don't rate him as highly as I do Barry Ferguson, it must be said. But having read his book and everything, and I think that's kind of persuaded me a wee bit and all. But Leigh Mcculloch, I think he took the job on it, undoubtedly one of the most difficult times in the history of the club, and done a job, served us with dignity. It was never for lack of trying. He played in some, let's face it, horrendous Rangers teams. He played in some of the best Rangers teams as well. Obviously got us to UEFA Cup final, and to then go for that to seeing Boyd and Miller coming back about 10 years later in League One or the Championship. Do you know what I mean? It must have been hard for the guy, regardless of his own ability. And I think it maybe soured towards the end. But for me, Leigh Mcculloch, absolute fans' favourite. I don't think, again, now this is probably where the viewers on YouTube are going to benefit a wee bit more. So for listeners, just to help you visualise it, with Derrick Johnson, Barry Ferguson and Davey Weir an icon, with Amoruso and fans' favourite. I think it'd be too much to stick McCulloch in icon, but I think on a par with Amoruso definitely suits him. So next up in Rangers category, perhaps one of the more unsung heroes of recent Rangers times. Now I think as time's passed, he's maybe not remembered as fondly as what he was at the time. But Lee Wallace, he was given the captaincy when Leigh Mcculloch left. And he's one of these players he could have left for Premiership clubs in 2012. He came to Rangers in his view to win trophies for Hearts, and he'd done it, I think, in his first season, maybe second. And he stayed on till we get back to the top tier of Scottish football. And for me, he was always emblematic of Rangers. He seemed to be quite dignified, humble, and just good at what he done. Again, played in some horrendous Rangers teams. Maybe sacrificed Scotland recognition to do so. Where do we see Lee Wallace, Scott?
So I think the sort of narrative around Lee Wallace, I think, is quite fair in the sense that everyone believes that he almost sacrificed his national career and maybe part of his footballing career to carry on with Rangers. A guy that just spoke with the heart. Every time you asked him about his time at Rangers, he would always speak really passionate about it. And I think there was I spoke earlier on this about there being an identity with maybe fans and teams and fans and players at that particular time. I think there was you could identify with Leigh Wallace when he was speaking there about how proud he was to play for the club and referring to the journey on numerous occasions and all that sort of stuff. I think that people identified with Leigh Wallace, and for that reason, I would say that Leigh Wallace is a fan's favourite. I wouldn't, similar to the discussion on Leigh Mcculloch, I wouldn't put him any higher than that as far as an icon or a club legend's concerned. But I would say quite comfortably he's a fan's favourite for me.
What about yourself, Dylan? Leigh Wallace is a icon, fan's favourite, done a job. I think it's fair to rule him out a club legend and sackable offence at this point.
Yeah, I think for me, I would agree with Scott for fans' favourite. I think at 2012, he was decided for one season from Hearts, 1.5 million. So again, you wouldn't have blamed him if he just sort of left and went down south to an upper half of the Championship or lower half of the Premiership. So I think the fact that, he sacrificed his national career, he also sacrificed his playing career, let's be honest, because I think it was about 23, 24 at times. So he was risking like his prime years playing in, the lower tiers of Scottish football. So I think we always have to be thankful for that. I wouldn't say Leigh Wallace was an amazing captain. I'd never really seen him as a leader, but as Scott said, he always spoke with passion about the club. I think as well he kind of helped to let new signings know about the standards of the club, especially during Warburton's time and to an extent Gerrard's time. For me, he's fans' favourite, along with Gregg. I think he always has a special place in my heart because I think, when everybody was leaving us in 2012, he sort of stuck it for the journey, as it were. So I think he will. I don't think he is as fondly remembered now as he was at the time. But for me, he's certainly a fan's favourite.
See, I think this is going to be quite controversial, but I don't rate Leigh Wallace all that highly. I don't think he was an exceptional player. I don't think he was a great leader. I think it was just there was a lack of competition at the time for people who could take the role up. And I don't know, just when you're saying about, setting the standards for new signings and stuff, again, similar to Davey Weir, I think it's his personality that goes against him. I think he was very timid and reserved. You would never see him getting aggressive or overly emotive. And for me, I think that maybe worked against him. I don't rate him as highly as Leigh Mcculloch, I must admit. But I certainly don't. I wouldn't place him in the same category as Carlos Bocanegra because I just think that's a bit disrespectful to the guy who admittedly did sacrifice quite a lot of professional development for Rangers. I think fans' favourite is probably a good place to put him. Now, the most recent captain in Rangers history, now this is going to be quite interesting to see where we place him because it's quite a high debate on Twitter. Where is James Taverner for us, guys? Captain that won his 55, he's recently lifted the Scottish Cup, led us to a European final, played in some pretty poor Rangers sides, it must be said. I must admit, he played in the Florida Cup. Him and Leigh Wallace deserve a shout out just for doing that. So where do we see James Taverner? He's played in a Europa League final and the Florida Cup for Rangers. Where do we see him?
So I think it's quite fair to say that James Taverner is probably 30 minutes away from being a club legend a couple of weeks ago. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Because if Rangers go and win in Seville, and he's marching up there to lift that trophy above his head, the only other person, as far as I'm concerned, that we're looking at in that board that can do something or can claim he's done something of a similar ilk would be John Gregg. Because none of the other guys there went and won a European trophy with Rangers. And James Taverner, I think, was 30 minutes away from doing that if we could have held on. What I would say is that I think you're right. I think Tavs came through quite a bit of adversity since he came up to the country. played with some absolutely rotten footballers that we weren't used to seeing at Rangers, had quite rightly a bit of stick back and forward, because there have been times his performances haven't been up to scratch. And I think the last 2 years, James Taverner has been really quite incredible for Rangers. His numbers are on a different planet to anyone else. Certainly in this country, I would argue that he's probably in one of the top sort of 5 players for his numbers are concerned in the country. His numbers are incredible. For a guy that's playing right back, goodness me, you know what I mean? It's easy to forget that he's doing it on a European stage as well. He's not doing it against the jobber teams. He's not doing it against the Ross Counties, Ibrox, and maybe the Motherwells across at Fir Park. He's doing it in Germany. He's doing it in Portugal. You know what I mean? If England had a really rotten selection of right backs, which they don't, James Taverner would be the English right back, and certainly in and around that squad. There's no doubt about it, because he couldn't be ignored. He couldn't possibly ignored. He's that good. But yeah, for me, and it's only my opinion, he was 30 minutes away from becoming a club legend, and I think at the moment he's crashing in to that icon role alongside Davey Weir, Barry Ferguson, and Derrick Johnson.
What about yourself, Dylan? James Taverner, club legend, icon, fans' favourite. Where are you placing him?
I think he's definitely the upper tiers, to be honest. I think, as Scott said, you know, he came through such a thirsty ever since he became captain. I think even up until the season before 55, there were still questions about his, you know, suitability for the role. And I think it's quite a hard one, because I think when I think anyone who lifted number 55 for us would have been an icon, because, you know, those MCs would have kind of lived on forever, to be honest with you. And again, you know, his numbers have been amazing. I mean, I think you're talking about a right back. I think we're never going to see a right back with just those numbers ever again. Again, I could be wrong in a few years, but I think he's certainly led by example in the last couple of seasons. I think as well, like, the players respect him as well as the managers. I mean, Stephen Shard didn't give him the captaincy for no reason, especially when we had the likes of Alan McGregor on our books. I think for me, I would say if we put him in icon, because I think he will be remembered fondly. I think he is definitely one of the better right backs that we've ever had, in my opinion. But I think, I don't know, I think there's a something holding him back from club legend. And again, as Scott was saying, he was 30 minutes away from being a legend if Rangers did win the final in Seville. But he's certainly an icon, and I don't think you're going to get much disagreement with that, if I'm honest.
So at the minute, we don't have Tav as a club legend. Controversial. I'm sure Twitter will love it.
So out of curiosity though, Reiss, would you have had him as a club legend?
Personally, looking at the list just now, I would have Ferguson and Tav in club legend. Personally, I think I would rate him higher than Davey Weir and Derrick Johnson.
Yeah.
And at least on a par with Richard Goff. Again, it's probably age and recency bias.
Yeah.
But Taverner, for me, I don't know what it is. He's got that infectious personality. I think he's one of the guys who came up perhaps unaware of how big the club was. Definitely the biggest club he's played for in his career. And he seems to get it now. Having come as an outsider, he didn't grow up in Glasgow. It's not as if he grew up in Copeland Road or whatever, but he gets it. 100% he knows what it means to represent Rangers. He's a role model, to be fair. I don't think there's ever been much bad publicity about him. There's definitely been questions over his ability as a captain and potentially the defender or the other. But I think you're totally right. If he wins that final, he's nailed on club legend. Because to be able to say you've won a European trophy and 55, there's not many people who can do that. And having stayed in the Rangers team, having been forced to play alongside Senderos and Rob Kiernan, club legend for me. Anybody who manages to keep their place in the team after that deserves a club legend status.
Yeah, I'll tell you, wouldn't it be interesting to know of the guys on the board entirely, just how many medals they've won between them. I mean, you look at the guys in club. I mean, everyone knows why I've said John Gregg because of what he done in 1972. Richard Goff, 4 front of 9 in a row, and then you know what I mean. When you filter the guys down, there's medals everywhere, and I don't think you want to be the captain at Rangers that doesn't walk away into the sunset when you decide to wrap it and go into pastures new, and don't have a lot of medals. It's easy to forget at the moment. James Taverner, I think, has only got 2.
Aye, I think that league titles medal, that league winners medal rather, and the Scottish Cup. I don't think we're going to count the championship because some of the squad members in that, the likes of Billy King, Barry Mackay, and that, just no, you don't count that. It's not a major honour. But I'm conscious of how long maybe this episode's gone on for Rangers Ranks. It's definitely been a great one to start with. Now, I am aware there will be people looking at the board and realising there are some notable omissions. Now, we have omitted Terry Butcher and Craig Moore. Just quickly, guys, where would we place them in this tier list, considering we haven't had them on the board?
Oh, that's a difficult.
Terry Butcher to begin with.
And you're only allowed 4 in each tier.
Icon is currently full, so you could move someone for Icon up and stick Butcher into Icon, or you could add him to fans' favourite. I don't think any would have him lower than fans' favourite, to be totally honest with you.
So Butcher, I'll always remember getting pictured up at Boccanegra when we won the league, and that was a huge moment in our history. Do you know what I mean? That was massive because I said earlier on, we had the Craig Patterson days in the early 80s when things just weren't great. And for Terry Butcher to come to Glasgow and play his football alongside guys like Chris Woods and Graham Roberts and be encouraged to come up here and win medals by the magnificent one himself, I think it was a real masterstroke to get Terry Butcher up to Rangers. And he was a successful captain and an absolute powerhouse of a defender, incredible defender. You won't remember him, so don't pretend you do. Goodness me, I'm actually glad that Terry Butcher wasn't in the clips, you know that, because I'm not entirely sure who in the 4 icons that we have, I would move one way or another. I think for what he did win, I would potentially move Barry Ferguson into club legend and move Terry Butcher into icon.
Right, we'll move Ferguson up one, and although it won't be visual, we'll have Terry Butcher in icon alongside Derrick Johnson, Davey Weir and James Taverner. Craig Moore, Dylan, where would you place the Aussie?
I think for me personally, I would maybe just been his fans' favourite. I think he did do a good job for us. I think he was pretty solid for us. I think he came up during Africa's time and he was still there when McQueen was there. Obviously, you had a controversy with the Olympics when he chose to represent Australia over a Champions League qualifier. So I think that may have soured some Rangers fans' taste. But no, I think it'd be fair for him to be a fan's favourite. I don't think he is as iconic as Davey Weir or Taverner, but I think he certainly did see some success with Rangers, especially like the treble season, the same as Barry. So yeah, I think he's very comfortably in fans' favourite for me.
But then, would you have Craig Moore above Stefan Kloss?
As captain, yes. I'll argue so, yeah.
Do you think so? See, for me, Kloss is more of a noteworthy Rangers player. I don't know whether that's, again, because I would have been a top when either of them were at their peak, but Kloss seems to stand out more in memory and maybe spoken about more. I don't know if it's more a positional thing, but aye. So we'll stick Craig Moore in fans' favourite alongside Lorenzo Amoruso, Leigh Mcculloch and Lee Wallace. So just to recap on your first episode of Rangers Ranks, we've got Sackable Offence, Gavin Ray, because let's be honest, that's best forgotten about. There has been as I said earlier on, Barry Ferguson's had nights out longer than Gavin Ray was captain of Rangers. Done a job. We've got Craig Patterson, Stefan Kloss, Stephen Davis and Carlos Boccanegra, either because it was just mediocre captaincy or a very, very short term. Fans' favourite, Amoruso, Leigh Mcculloch, Lee Wallace. Again, maybe due to a lack of competition. We've got Craig Moore in there as well, although not visually. Icon, Derrick Johnson. He's in quite a lot of history books, which was a great point for Dylan. Davey Weir, rather, who was a great servant to the club, pretty emblematic and graceful. Tav, again, controversial. I reckon there will be quite a few disagreements in the comments, but make sure to let us know whether you think he's a legend or an icon. We've placed him an icon for the time being, alongside Terry Butcher. And the 3 club legends we've got are John Gregg, Richard Goff and Barry Ferguson. So
See, for the avoidance of doubt, see if the 3 guys that we've got in club legend just now, they are absolutely not up for debate. Do you know what I mean? John Gregg and Richard Goff are absolutely, undebatably Rangers club legends. I don't think that there's anyone that can question that. Barry Ferguson's maybe open to a bit more of a discussion. I think that the board rings true for a lot of Rangers fans. I'm early 40s, and I would like to think that fans maybe of a similar age to me don't disagree with much of what we've kind of agreed there, Reiss.
Well, that will do us for the first episode of Rangers Ranks. Thanks very much for joining me, Scott and Dylan. Been a pleasure having you on.
Thanks, Reiss. Well done, buddy. Good.
Yeah, absolute pleasure doing this, and I can't really watch many more lists.
Aye, so let us know what you'd like us to rank next time. Again, let us know any disagreements and agreements in the comments. Tav, Barry Ferguson, Butcher, where would you have them? Let us know. And next time it might be goalkeepers, it could be managers. Don't know. Make sure to let us know what you would like us to rank in the comments below. Thanks again for listening to This Is Ibrox. See you later on.